These days, it seems sometimes very overwhelming and very challenging. There are a lot of things in the news that are very overwhelming. And then we also sometimes have situations in our family, in our community, where we're suffering a huge loss. And it can be very difficult to know what to do or where to turn. And today, I am really, really delighted to be sharing my guest, Tom Ballard, with all of you. I met Tom in Arizona about 6 months ago. He's known as the Heart Rock Guy, and we're about to dive in and learn why. Tom, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So I would love if you would share why you're called the Heart Rock Guy and how you got started.
So it definitely wasn't my intention to become known as Tom the Heart Rock guy. I I live with mental illness. I have bipolar disorder, and some days are really, really difficult. And so what I've done to help myself cope is I take rocks and I cut them, and then I started carving the heart them into hearts. And so I started making these heart rocks. And then I was like, well, what should I do with these? And so I started hiding them in public places or giving them to people. And I started to notice that obviously I'm not the only one that's having dark days and off days and bad days. And I found that if I kept heart rocks in my pocket or the cup holder in my car, or my backpack, if I had the hearts on hand, it would remind me to look out for others. And I'd find opportunities every single day to pass it on and just let someone know that you're loved and you're not alone and you matter. And I'd invite them to either keep it or pass it on to someone else. And so for the last 4.5 years, almost 5 years, I've made and distributed over 210,000 heart rocks. And now this is all I do with my life is I make heart rocks. I do community events and school assemblies teaching about the power of creating kindness and using it to help others and how that's a great way to bring joy into your own life, even when you're in a dark place.
And I have to say, the rocks that you make are so beautiful. They're so unique. And I love how you have opportunities for people to purchase large quantities of rocks and pass that message along, like you're bringing your reach even further by doing that. Can you share some of the places that you've brought rocks?
Yeah, so when I first started, I hand carved every single one with a little like tile saw.
Oh
And then
my.
as the years have gone by, yeah, it was really dangerous. I started getting better equipment and people started donating stone to me. But I faced the problem that I was wearing out my hands because I was making tens of thousands. And so I've hired a little army to help me make heart rocks. I've got 28 stone carvers now that are
Wow.
working full time to help me make tens of thousands of heart rocks a month. And now instead of spending 95% of my time making hearts and then 5% distributing them, I'm doing 1 to 2 school assemblies a day and then
Mm.
community events and and I'm spending most of my time finding people that need the heart rocks. But despite all of my efforts, I have a very limited sphere of influence. And so what I've decided to do is I want to flood the world with heart rocks. And I think the best way to do it is make them available and make them super affordable. So someone can go like on my website and order 30 heart rocks for like $35.
Mhm.
And then what happens is a lot of therapists, school counselors, and teachers, they'll go on and they'll get heart rocks and they'll give them to every single one of their students or every single one of their clients. And they can keep it as a physical reminder that they matter and they're loved and they're seen and they're not alone. And then they can keep it, or maybe they pass it on to someone else.
Mhm.
But my goal has been I lost a family member to suicide, and that's why I do this. And so my goal has been to help other people and other families to deepen their friendships, strengthen family ties, and maybe even save lives by using little heart rocks and handwritten notes to spread kindness and compassion and caring. and just let people know how much you care. And, um, and so my goal is 1,000,000 Heart Rocks made and distributed by Thanksgiving 2029.
Wow.
So I'm doing everything I can to make and distribute them, mostly through like school assemblies. Or yesterday, I went to the hospital and brought a bunch of
Mhm.
Heart Rocks. And I'll go to retirement homes and hide them around my community or give them to neighbors. But everybody knows somebody that's in a dark place or struggling. And so what I've found is when I speak at a school assembly, I'll bring Heart Rocks for every single person in the whole school. And then I'll bring a few hundred extras to put in the counseling center. And I'll tell all the kids, keep your Heart Rock as your little physical reminder that you matter and you're loved. And
Mhm.
if you know someone's in a dark place and you want to reach out to them, go to the counseling center and get an extra Heart Rock, and then go today and give it to them and let them know that you love them and care. Because people are funny. They might keep it their whole life. And, um, and that ends up being just like a sneaky, gentle, simple form of suicide prevention.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to just flood the world with Heart Rocks. I'm not I'm not in this to make any money. I'm in the process of setting it up as a nonprofit organization because my whole thought is if I make enough Heart Rocks and distribute enough of them, odds are that one of these can be used to save someone's life someday. And what I'm most excited about is in 4.5 years of distributing about 210,000 Heart Rocks through my social media and people just sharing their stories with me and from my own personal experiences. As of this last week, I'm aware of 106 instances where myself or someone else has used the Heart Rocks to prevent a potential death by suicide. And so 210,000 Heart Rocks, 106 lives. But then it also is used to create, I don't know, just so many opportunities to say, I love you and I care. And all of that adds up. And that's, I think, the beauty and the simplicity of handing someone a Heart Rock and saying, I love you is that idea of permanence because it's a rock and each one's unique.
Uh,
But
and I love it. I bought 100 rocks from you, 100 hearts, and I showed it first to my family, and I let everybody pick one. And because I love the message behind it, like, how fabulous to have this tangible reminder that somebody loves you and somebody cares. And then sadly, in my community, there was a young person who chose to end their life. And because of what you made, I was able to bring 25 rocks to that family. So one for each surviving member of the family, and then 20 that they could distribute to the people who they thought needed them. And it's just a really wonderful thing. And I keep giving them out. I'm gonna have to buy more soon because I keep finding opportunities to share them. I love your idea of keeping a couple in my car, though. I think I need to start doing that instead of keeping them on my dresser. I have them in
yeah,
a bookable. So they're very
I love
beautiful.
that.
And I sometimes play with them, the different colors, and they're some of them are polished and some of them are not. But it's really lovely, so I'll throw a couple in the car now.
I love that. I think the beauty of just having something on hand, whether it's like a handwritten note or a heart-shaped rock or whatever it is if you're prepared to spread kindness, then you're naturally going to be looking for opportunities to do so. I found that by keeping Heart Rocks in my cup holder, you know where I give them out most often? Is when I go through the drive-through and they hand me my food and my drink, I hand them a little handful of Heart Rocks. And
Oh,
they always say the same thing. They're like, "What's this for?" And I say, "I made these little Heart Rocks to remind you that you're making the world a better place. And you
that
can keep your favorite and then pass on the others." And when I go through the drive-through, I've done this dozens of times now. Oftentimes they'll cry or they'll start handing them out to the other employees in the restaurant immediately. And then they'll come to the window one by one and say, "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I needed this." And on one occasion, it was like 11 o'clock at night. There was a boy, maybe 18 years old, working the drive-through by himself. And I handed him 10 Heart Rocks and he started to cry. And he took off his headset and walked out of the restaurant to my car and told me, he's like, "You have no idea how much I needed this." One of his best friends that had worked with him at the restaurant ended his life a couple months ago. And he was there Friday night at 11 p.m., just feeling so lonely and hopeless and missing his friend. And then I gave him Heart Rocks just out of the blue. And he said, "You have no idea how much I needed this." And as I was driving away, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw through the window of the restaurant that that employee had called together the other three people working in the restaurant that night and was handing them each a Heart Rock and explaining it to them. And that, I think, is just the simple beauty of creating kindness where it doesn't exist. I think about that often. And like, so many people are hurting. Mhm. And so many people are in it. And for some people, those dark places are lasting for weeks, or months, or maybe even years. And just the thought that, like, we can do something that's so simple and so kind, and it can make a difference for the rest of their life. I think that that is, it's worth dedicating a life to.
Mhm.
And so I personally have decided my goal is to just make as many Heart Rocks and distribute them as I can with my lifetime. And if there's even the smallest chance it can help one person, it's worth it. And I know it's going to help me. And so just keep going with the Heart Rocks.
And I think one of the things that's so beautiful about what you're doing, Tom, is that we are bombarded on so many sides by overwhelming news in the media or struggles that people may be having in different aspects of their life or the loss of someone that, the feelings have lingered. And to have this one small bright spark, this one little thing, and you're making it possible for people, like you said, to focus on kindness. That is such a huge
Yeah.
gift. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I feel like one of the most difficult emotions, especially for teenagers and children, is when you want to help someone, but you don't know how to. And so you hesitate. And
Yeah.
I actually started making the Heart Rocks when I was a teacher. I was an emergency substitute teacher on a reservation. And I saw just a lot of students that were just grieving. They'd been through so much trauma, and I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. And so I'd hesitate. And I knew that they had their family and the school counselor and their friends and all these other people to help them. But I didn't like feeling like I couldn't help and that I was hesitating. And so I started giving away the heart shaped rocks. And it was such a simple gesture of kindness. And they loved it and they appreciated it. But then the most beautiful thing was when I saw the students I'd given heart rocks to, they started passing them on to other students when they recognized they were struggling. And for me, that was the aha moment. I thought, what would happen if I made 168 heart rocks? Because I had 168 students. Would they keep it? Would they pass it on? What would they do? And so I did that. I made 168, and about half kept it, and the other half passed it on. But then dozens came back week after week asking for more heart rocks. So I
Wow.
made enough for the school and then the whole school district. And then I lost a family member to suicide, and I swore in my grief I was going to make and distribute 100,000 Heart Rocks and just see if the family prevented death. And that was how it kind of started and got going and rolling. But I think that's the whole purpose is if you need a little reminder that you matter, you can keep it in your pocket or on your nightstand. Keep it your whole life as that little physical reminder that you matter.
Yeah.
Or if you come across someone that's in a dark place, it's so easy to say, I've had this in my cup holder for 4 months. Time I see it, it reminds me that I'm worthy and I'm enough and I'm seen. And now I want you to have it. Keep it as long as you need it. And then when you are ready, you pass it on.
Yeah.
And these rocks are millions of years old. They could literally be passed down for generations.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that every time a heart rock gets passed from person to person, it amplifies its meaning, it grows in its importance and its significance. And I love the idea of Like yesterday, I spoke at a preschool and I gave all the kids a little heart rock. And I told them, I was like, someday you could give your heart rock to your great grandchild and let them know that you love them. And I just love that concept of like, I don't know, this could be a generational movement, flooding the world with heart rocks, reminding people that they matter. I mean, why not? You know, it brings me so much joy when I'm like at Costco and they hand me a free sample and I go, oh, thank you so much. Here's a little heart rock reminder that you matter and you're making the world a better place. And they get so excited. And it just is like creating kindness and surprises. I love it. And it never gets old. I've been doing it for 4.5 years. And whether I'm in like a bipolar manic state and I haven't slept for days, or I've been in just the deepest, darkest depression for months, I know that making heart rocks is like my art therapy. It's fun and it's grounding and centering and it helps me just come to a neutral headspace. And I know for certain that regardless of the way I am feeling, if I reach out to others and let them know that they matter and they're worthy and they're beautiful and they're seen, by hearing myself say it, I remind myself. And so it's, I think selfishly that the heart rock movement is how I'm help lifting myself out of those dark places too. And I don't know, it's kind of become addictive and it's the kind of life I want to lead.
And it's beautiful that you're I love that message, you are seen, you are loved, because I feel like so often we move through the world, especially people who work in service industries
Mhm.
or people who are at certain life stages where they're invisible.
Yeah.
And for a moment, we just remind them, "I see you," and that is just such a beautiful thing. Tom, you've
Yeah.
shared so much, and I love your stories, and I love all the things that you're doing. I'm so excited for you, and what a big, beautiful goal, 1,000,000 heart rocks, and you're almost 25% of the way there, which is fabulous.
It's wild.
I'm sure. So I have to ask you though, like what is one small step that you think people could take to maybe show that they care or that they are being intentional in the world?
Perfect. So one thing that I came up with about a year ago is I call it being nice. NICE. And it specifically addresses that moment of hesitation. Like, for example, I was in downtown Salt Lake City walking to an event and there was hundreds of people on the sidewalk, all walking the same direction. And I thought I heard someone crying. And I noticed behind one of the bus stops, I noticed a woman just down in the fetal position, just weeping. And I just like everyone else on the sidewalk, I walked past. And and then I stopped and I was like, no, I've been there and I've got a little heart rock in my pocket. I'm gonna go do something. So I went back to her and I got down on her level and I said, here's I noticed you're having a bad day. I want you to have this and know that you're loved and you're seen and you're not alone. You keep it and then pass it on. And the way she held on to it and the way her eyes went from just despair to hope, like that moment was beautiful. But you can kind of break it down into four different steps. If you notice the people that are around you and then you take interest in them, I think that's the first two steps is we stop to notice people and then we take interest. And then that very naturally in our brains and in our hearts turns into compassion and empathy. And it doesn't mean that in every instance we should notice people, take interest in them, and give them a heart rock. But what it means is we should notice the people around us and then take interest in them. And then that turns into compassion and empathy. And my way of being kind or nice is I make heart rocks and give them away. But what's most important is for every single person to identify what is your favorite version of kindness. And then when you notice people and you take interest, then you be compassionate and empathetic and you do it your way. because that's the best way, and that's what's gonna bring you the most joy. My wife likes to bake loaves of bread for people, and she'll give them loaves of bread. I've got a sister that loves to make, like, baked goods and drop those off. My mom likes to take Post-it notes and write little nice notes and leave them on people's keyboards or on their door. But I think it's just important that you make that intentional practice of noticing the people around you and taking interest, and then having compassion and empathy. Whatever that looks like for you, that's the way to do it. And every time you do it, it just gets easier and easier and easier, and it becomes who you are.
Yeah.
That's how I've become Tom, the hard rock guy, is one heart rock, one person at a time. And, uh, and all it is becoming a kind person. And that's the process is you just one person, one kind act, repeat. And if you repeat it enough, then it just kind of sticks.
And I love that if someone doesn't have an identified way for them to express kindness, there's a very easy way for them to do that, which is to simply purchase rocks, which you have.
Yeah.
I have to say, they are so affordable. Really, it's very reasonable and very kind of you for all the labor that goes into it and to buy those. So I'll make sure to put the link down below so people can connect with you. I'll also share one of the things that I did is I got some of your night lights, which are wonderful because those are great too. Because at night that little heart shows up, and with the light
Yeah.
behind it glows through the stone. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. That was my little 3-year-old niece. That was her idea. Um, my brother-in-law ended his life 4 years ago. And I made heart rocks for my nieces. They were 3, 4, and 5 at the time. And I was showing them the heart rocks, and I was like, some of these, if you hold them up to the light, you can see through them. They're translucent. And the little 3-year-old held it down to the nightlight. And so I took that heart rock and glued it on her nightlight. So when she and her sisters would sleep at night, the little heart rock would glow, and they decided it was their reminder that their dad was there and still loves them and was watching over them. And so, yeah, since you mentioned the night lights, that's the background story. I've made about, I think, 15,000 of those night lights, and they're in every state all over the country, and some of them are in other countries too. And people are using their daily glowing heart rock as a reminder that they matter and they're loved and seen. And the night lights are my favorite. I'm really glad you brought them up.
That is so amazing. Tom, thank you so much for your time and for your huge human heart in creating all of these beautiful heart rocks. I really appreciate and love your mission and what you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing and for being here today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So for everyone who is watching, I encourage you to follow Tom's example and remember to be NICE as you move through your day. If you would like to buy Heart Rocks and share those and help him reach his goal of sharing 1,000,000 Heart Rocks by Thanksgiving of 2029, I will put the link down below. And I want to thank you for being here and for watching, and to remind you in all you do to make today a healthy day. Bye, folks.